Trucking fights fraud. Robots become more human. And hesitancy with AI. Pull up a chair and join us as the editors of DC Velocity discuss these stories as well as news and supply chain trends on this week's Logistics Matters podcast. Hi, I'm Dave Maloney. I'm the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity. Welcome. Logistics Matters is sponsored by Werner. In the automotive world, similar to many industries, speed is everything. Werner provides the engineered multimodal solutions to keep your business moving. From bulk hauls to nightly parts delivery, Werner's flexible fleet scales to meet the demands of any shop or retail store. Get reliable and safe precision from a supply chain partner who understands your unique needs. Become a customer today at choosewerner.com. As usual, our DC Velocity senior editors Ben Ames and Victoria Kickham will be along to provide their insights into the top stories of this week. But to begin today, we've seen huge changes within the trucking industry during the past year based on two big issues: the licensing of non-domiciled drivers and the huge surges we see in freight fraud. Victoria Kickham finds out more about what's being done to address these issues in this week's guest interview. Victoria?
Thanks, Dave. Our guest today is Tony Bradley. He is president and CEO of the Arizona Trucking Association, and he's here to talk about fraud and illegal activity in trucking and the industry's efforts to stop it. Welcome, Tony.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So the trucking industry has been under a microscope recently due to some high-profile crashes, really some tragedies on our nation's highways, and also accelerating levels of fraud across the industry. Now, you represent a group of state trucking associations that has come together to try and do something about all this. I wonder if you can just tell us briefly about the group, the coalition you formed, and your primary goals.
Yeah, so the group is a Trucking Association Executive Council. It's a small but mighty group that's existed in some form or another since the trucking associations were created back in the late 1940s. It's a partnership of the 50 state trucking associations, and the last year and a half or so, we've been talking about a lot of these issues at our regular meetings. In July, we formalized a task force to really identify the issues, but more importantly, to create an action plan that can be worked off of to address the issues. We recently gave that report to Secretary Duffy and Administrator Bars, and have had productive dialogue with them on how to root out some of the bad actors in trucking.
So you're taking some specific actions to stop this, then. That's what we're talking about here.
That's right. I mean, we can all talk around the water cooler about the problems that are happening, but we really wanted to look at why they're happening and what we can do to prevent them. Because every day we see news of legitimate trucking companies that are going out of business because they can't compete with bad actors. It's hurting members all across this country, but more importantly, it's creating a public safety issue. And that's why this issue has been brought to the forefront. And so we wanted to address that, really show, hey, here's where we think you can do some real help and make our roads safer. The good news about this report is most of the things in it are already authorized, so they can be done at the regulatory level. There are a few things that need legislative action, but these are things that they can take action on today.
Right, so we're going to dig into some of those. And you mentioned public safety, and from that perspective, the main problems seem to be, the issuing of illegal commercial driver's licenses, or somehow these invalid CDLs getting out there, and a lack of English language proficiency among some drivers. I wonder if you can describe the scale of these issues and tell us a little bit about what your group thinks is the best way to solve these types of problems.
Yeah, we understand that there might be up to 200,000 non-domiciled CDLs that were issued and maybe not done legitimately. CDL integrity is the cornerstone that everything else is built off of. So if we don't have that integrity at that CDL level, everything else is undermined. And so that's why it's such an important part of this action plan, to make sure that those drivers are trained and understand English and can understand directions in order to travel safely on our roads. If we don't have that, everything else falls apart.
So what are some of the steps that can be taken then to sort of act on that?
And I think, what we've seen the administration start to take action on that, kind of pausing. They've done a census of all the state DMVs to say, how are you issuing? How many have you issued? Have you issued them correctly? We've seen action taken against a few states for them to fix it. So we're very encouraged by the action that's being taken by the administration. There's other questions of how some of these people were able to get driver's license or CDLs when they weren't properly trained. And so I think it takes both federal action and then states to make sure that they're reviewing their programs consistently and auditing their programs to make sure that they're up to federal standards.
So, from what I've read, data seems to be a big part of this in terms of getting state and federal agencies aligned on different issues and also improving different databases, safety databases, that kind of thing. What are some of the recommendations your group is making in that regard? I'm wondering if you can maybe give an example of sort of a misalignment between the feds and the states, or a practice that could be improved.
Yeah, I think there are two different databases we kind of talk about. One is the driver's license database. Right now, as I understand it, each state operates separately, and so even though they have the ability to interconnect, and so we're asking for an interconnection of those state DMV databases. The other one is the MixMiss database. Right now, 90% of all carriers operate without a safety rating, and we're asking the question, how is that even possible? So, using AI, using different metrics to look at that data and say, okay, where do we have unsafe operators? We also know that a lot of the data that's entered into that database is done incorrectly. The MCS 150 is done incorrectly. Where you've got one truck, it may show that they've got a couple thousand trucks because they put their zip code there instead of the amount of units. And so really using AI, we have the ability to use AI to look at that database and say, okay, where are there's possible problems so that we can do targeted enforcement on those areas. That's a big component, is using technology smarter. The databases are outdated. We can look at the data and say, okay, here's some things we can identify. We also can look at that data and say, why is there 15 trucking companies at a PO box that's not at a physical location? Maybe that's something we should investigate, because that's really the root of the chameleon carriers who are out there doing unsafe practices as well.
So you mentioned a data, just for our audience, MixMiss. Can you tell me, that's a safety database, correct?
That's the FMCSA database.
Okay, great, thank you. We mentioned this a minute ago about some of the Trump administration's efforts to sort of prioritize these things. And as you said, they have asked a handful of states to revoke CDLs they say were issued illegally. And are planning to withhold federal highway funding if those requests aren't met. I was going to ask if you agree with these actions. You mentioned earlier, I think it sounds like you do. How much of a difference do you think this will make in rooting out some of these problems we're talking about?
We're hopeful that it makes a tremendous difference. We know that many of these people are not qualified to operate a commercial motor vehicle. The legitimate carriers have increased the standards over the years, and we've made our roads safer, and they undermine all our efforts when they're acting illegally. So, in concept, we are absolutely supportive of what's happening, and we're working with our law enforcement partners to provide support in the states that, we also have state resources, because it's all my counterparts across the United States. So it's not just a federal issue. We've got ability in the states to really amplify the message and say, this is what we're trying to do. This is why we're trying to accomplish it. Because oftentimes, you read in the headline that the Trump administration is doing something, and people are like automatically throw up their hands like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Well, no, these are legitimate safety issues that make all of our roads safer.
So your coalition is also looking into other issues. Freight fraud is one, and that's certainly been accelerating. We've covered that quite a bit here at DC Velocity. What are your recommendations for fighting some of the sort of scams that shippers, freight brokers, and carriers are up against?
Yeah, it certainly is part of it, and that goes back to cleaning up the database. I mean, the database security is lacking. We don't have two-factor identification, so somebody just needs to get the PIN, and they can essentially steal a carrier's identification. We're encouraged by the bill that just passed out of the House yesterday with the American Trucking Association support, but it takes some federal action, because I know I personally have had phone calls from carriers of mine saying, I've got a trailer stolen in Kingman, Arizona. Who do I call? And they're told to call the local police, and the Kingman police just doesn't know what to do. So we need some federal oversight and some federal accountability, but interagencies working together. But again, from some of our perspective, it's increasing broker bonds because they need to have some skin in the game. There's a variety of different things we can do, but that data security is a big part of it.
So, what can industry professionals do to help with some of the efforts we've discussed here? I'm wondering if there's any advice you'd give to, say, carriers, brokers, and others really who are on the front lines dealing with these issues.
I would say one, if they're not a member of their state trucking association, they should be. Two, they can go to truckingresurgence.com, look at our plan and say, hey, yeah, you're on the right track here. Here's some other things that I see. It's also going back to that old mentality. See something, say something. We're all talking about it, but we need to deliver some solutions. Join your trucking association, talk to your state and elected leaders, both at the state and federal level, and work with law enforcement to identify these problems and root out the bad actors.
So that was truckingresurgence.com. Is that what you
That's
said?
correct. Truckingresurgence.com.
Terrific. Tony, thanks very much for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us to talk about this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We have been talking with Tony Bradley of the Arizona Trucking Association. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Tony and Victoria. Now let's take a look at some of the other supply chain news from the week. And Ben, we aren't quite yet at the science fiction equivalent of robots that are completely indistinguishable from humans, but some would say we're moving in that direction as new advancements are giving our metal friends more human capabilities.
That's exactly right. I like the metal friends concept because this is one of those tech topics that has gotten a lot of buzz lately, talking about humanoid robots. Of course, those are that family of robots that have heads and bodies, torsos and arms. They either walk on two legs or some of them might roll on a moving base, more like an AMR. The technology is very new, of course. There have been lab experimental versions for a couple years, but they've only been seen sort of outside of those research labs recently. So this week we saw an example of how one of these critters might fit into a real world logistics workflow. We've also seen DHL, maybe XPO do some pilot cases. This one was happening with the German technology manufacturer provider Siemens, and they shared some details about how their pilot went.
That does sound interesting. So, where did Siemens actually use the robot and what were the results?
Yeah, this was a test at the Siemens electronics factory in Erlangen, Germany, and it used a model called an HMND-01 wheeled alpha robot. This is made by a British company called Humanoid. HMND is sort of humanoid without the vowels. So over the course of 2 weeks, the robot performed a tote-to-conveyor de-stacking task within Siemens' logistics process in that factory. So the robot autonomously picked totes from a storage stack, transported them to a conveyor, and placed them at the designated pickup point for human operators. According to both the firms, Siemens and Humanoid, the robots met specific goals, including there was a throughput of 60 tote moves per hour. That's one per minute, of course. Operation with 2 different tote sizes, continuous autonomous task execution for more than 30 minutes, and uptime of exceeding 8 hours. And in terms of how precise it was, they said the project achieved overall pick and place success rates and also autonomous pick and place success rates above 90%. Judge that as you will, but again, we're in the early process of this technology. But Humanoid said that the test really served to, in its words, validate our systems against real operational requirements and understand which use cases matter outside the lab. So you can see these are first steps to bringing it out of research into real world. And it's a measure of how the robots are coming along. It didn't indicate exactly when we might see them working alongside human warehouse and factory workers, but it seems to be coming down the road.
Yeah, it just seems like a matter of time, I would think. You're seeing that they are doing a lot of the same skills that humans can do, maybe not as fast and probably not as accurately, but I think it's just a matter of time before we see these new workers taking battery breaks while humans take their lunch breaks, I think.
I think that's about right. We'll be there to cover it when it happens.
Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
And Victoria, we've been hearing for at least a year about the promises that artificial intelligence and agentic AI in particular can bring to streamlining operations, saving time, and saving expenses. But yet, there's not a really big rush to deploy those agentic AI applications right away. Why is that?
Well, a combination of reasons, really. So, a recent survey of North American transportation, logistics, and supply chain executives reveals a disconnect between what those leaders see as the promise of advanced artificial intelligence solutions, like agentic AI, and their readiness to implement them. This survey was conducted by global technology firm Ortec, which is a provider of optimization software and analytics solutions. Their goal was to examine the effects of adopting AI and machine learning in logistics, and it revealed some interesting information about agentic AI and its role in the industry. While nearly all of the survey's 400 respondents said they recognized the potential of agentic AI to modernize planning and execution, 42% said that they are not yet exploring the technology and instead remain focused solely on traditional AI and machine learning approaches. Now, it helps to stop here and sort of provide some definitions. Traditional AI solutions perform tasks, based on predefined rules and algorithms. A common example is the virtual assistant Siri. You ask a question, she spits out an answer. Predictive maintenance in the warehouse would be an industry example. And agentic AI solutions can make decisions without human intervention. So examples include autonomous vehicles that can navigate traffic. Again, this report found a lot of enthusiasm for agentic AI, but a hesitancy to implement it. They said a small number of respondents had active agentic AI pilots or deployments at the end of the year, and just 23% said they plan to pilot agentic AI in the next 12 months.
That's really interesting. Did they say what are the main concerns about taking AI to the next level?
Yes, respondents pointed to high integration costs with existing systems as their number one frustration. They also cited a lack of model explainability, and what that means is it refers to situations in which AI systems make planning or execution decisions, but logistics teams can't clearly understand why a specific recommendation or action was taken. Respondents also said they are concerned about a lack of in-house expertise and unclear ROI when it comes to implementing AI in general. Despite all that, logistics leaders have high expectations for agentic AI and supply chain, as I mentioned, and among the benefits they listed cost savings through fuel and mileage optimization, increased operational resilience, and improved data quality as their top anticipated benefits. The executives surveyed also said they have a pretty clear view of where agentic AI should be applied first in supply chains. First and final mile route scheduling is seen as the top target, followed by global supply chain network design.
Well, I think it makes sense to tackle some of these quick beneficial applications first, and then once there's more experience gained on it, move on to more practical applications as well.
Yeah, I think we'll hear more and more about this for sure.
Certainly will. It's certainly not going away. It's going to be incorporated into just about anything we do in supply chains in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
We encourage listeners to go to dcvelocity.com for more on these and other supply chain stories. Also, check out the podcast notes section for some direct links to read more about the topics that we discussed today. And we'd like to thank Tony Bradley of the Arizona Trucking Association for being our guest. We welcome your comments on this topic and our other stories. You can email us at podcast@agilebme.com. We also encourage you to subscribe to Logistics Matters at your favorite podcast platform. Our new episodes are uploaded on Fridays. And a reminder, Logistics Matters is sponsored by Werner. In the automotive world, similar to many industries, speed is everything. Werner provides the engineered, multimodal solutions to keep your business moving. From bulk hauls to nightly parts delivery, Werner's flexible fleet scales to meet the demands of any shop or retail store. Get reliable and safe precision from a supply chain partner who understands your unique needs. Become a customer today at choosewerner.com. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Logistics Matters. Be sure to join us. Until then, have a great week.